Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sia Crest podcast, where we
Good
share
morning. Good
the
morning.
world news in a very objective, neutral way without any sort of political opinion. How's my liberal friend going on?
We, yes, welcome to TZS. We have different perspectives. Pedro is obviously over there in the EU. I'm over here in America. So, we're pretty opposite. We're separated by the Atlantic, but that's no big.
Now, bro, like after working in the with the EU myself, well, not exactly with the EU, but indirectly with them. Believe me, you can do kind of develop some sort of like Euroscepticism on the way.
So, what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover a variety of topics, mostly Trump and his actions and his and the administration's advice towards him, his new relationship with El Salvador, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine.
All right, I say that we start first with the recent offensive that allegedly Russia has made in the region of Kursk. Political Russia claims to take penultimate village in Kursk. Pressure has mounted on Ukraine recent weeks to make a decision on whether to pull out of the Kursk region. Moscow forces have taken one of the last remaining villages in the border region of Kursk, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed on Saturday. Units of the Nord military group have liberated the village of Oleshnia in the Kursk region during the active offensive operations. The ministry wrote on its Telegram account. Man, why is everyone in Russia using Telegram nowadays?
Well, it's a good. I mean, I know Telegram is pretty neat. You use Telegram, right?
Yeah, no, I don't really. Not anymore. Because you
Well, I
see,
mean, obviously we don't use it because.
yeah. But state on the Russian news agency TASS reported the ministry as saying that Ukraine has lost more than 75,000 servicemen fighting in the Kursk region. The claims were not immediately verifiable. Politico has approached the Ukrainian Defense Ministry for confirmation. Ukrainian forces has last year carried out a daring and expected offensive into the Kursk region. The decision was controversial within Ukraine. Though President Volodymyr Zelensky has insisted the incursion has been a success and has hinted that Ukraine's continued control of Russian territory could give Kiev leverage in any place negotiation with Moscow. Okay. Despite clinging on for months in Kursk, however, the Russian counteroffensive recently hit Ukrainian force hard. Military analysts warned that last month Ukraine commanders will soon have to decide whether to pull out of the region. Okay. So what are your thoughts on this, Orlando?
Well, first of all, this is contextual to the I believe it's contextual to the peace truce that is going on right now.
Hmm.
Um, I think people have mentioned, that in and around the news that it's just a strategic move to gain or lose territory depending on which side you're on. Uh, so I think this is Zelensky. I think I don't know who his friends are. Like I feel like the U.S. has friends on the negotiating table, but I feel like I mean Ukraine doesn't, and I think the EU needs to step up and try to make some sort of. They have to do something, man. They have to do something. Or what do you think? Is this boiling? Is this? Do you think things are boiling right now?
It is kind of unclear whether or not like the European Union is actually going to directly aid Ukraine because the reality is that here in Europe at least it is still kind of touchy, at least the idea of sending NATO troops into Ukraine because even though like the majority of like civilians and people do sympathize with the Ukrainians, there is really not that much of a of a desire to actually start like a major war with Russia over it. you know. And also, like this does kind of make me think of like situations similar that happened in World War One, and also like the end of the Korean War, when the possibility of a truce negotiation was on the horizon. Because all of these offensive, what it does is that it is an attempt to increase the leverage when it comes to negotiation.
Um, you personally, you personally, you are you more inclined to believe that NATO troops uh, are the enemy or like allies to Ukraine? Like, are they? I personally think they're proxied, right? I think it's a proxy. I think Ukraine is Europe's Afghanistan, um, which is a bummer. But what do you think?
I think that there is just like hidden anxiety about the possibility about the possibility that if Ukraine falls, that could actually embolden Russia to pretty much start like an invasion of like some other like regions like the Baltic countries. Personally, I don't think that is going to happen. I think that Russia has lost so much territory here and has lost so much resources and lives in this conflict that that is just not worth it for them. What I do believe that will be necessary, and I think is worth it, is to actually like continue to give aid to Ukraine and also allow like the sending of only like volunteer forces into Ukraine so that no matter the situation and the outcome of this war, the price for Russia has to be extremely high. And I think that is pretty much like
Um,
in my opinion,
Sorry, man. Let me.
and I do believe that that is actually pretty much what the opinion of the European Union is. Because pretty much most like military analysts actually do agree that the possibility that Ukraine might be able to actually like recover like all of the lost territory during the war, it is pretty ideal. Very ideal and kind of unrealistic. So pretty much like the big debate that is actually going on is whether Ukraine should be able to like join NATO and the European Union, for which the majority of actually European countries are actually on accordance with that idea.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, man. Regarding this article, Politico is obviously a little bit more left leaning. But I do feel that with the Ukrainian war, as of recent, when I read Politico, Reuters, or like The Guardian, they seem to be a little bit more, how do you say, unbiased. Have you noticed that? Like, I think the talks has become very serious, and I think everyone's noticing that there has the coming to of an agreement is becoming very gray. It's becoming gloomy. Um, so I think it's not really up to Ukraine, unfortunately. You know, I don't think they hold the biggest, as Trump says, they don't have the cards. But at some point, you know, there's going to have to be some sort of, someone's going to get like a plus 10. Like in this agreement, someone's going to just pull out a card that's going to say plus 10, or they're going to have a good draw, a good hand. And I think they're just going to slap it on the table and they're going to go about that sort of negotiation. But the
Yes.
thing is that the negotiation is
Mhm.
comprised of the EU, Russia, United States. Outside of that, Iran, you know, Japan, and then outside of that, it's the Latin American countries. You know, Latin American countries. They can vote all they want, but they're not going to make much of a difference.
Uh, the way I actually kind of like started to like rationalize it personally is that I'm gonna go follow like a American point of view in this, and it's the idea that I think that from the American perspective, Russia is really just not that much of a threat. After like the disaster of this conflict, after how they've lost like 50% of all of their equipment, in spite that the country has pretty much been mobilized for this war, I think that from the American perspective, there is this belief that Europe actually has more than enough capacity in order to defend itself, especially right now as there is more and more like the concept of European rearmament, which is something that actually the French have been doing already for a while. And it seems like both Spanish and German and British companies are starting to actually like put more funds into it, put more bones into it. And I think this goes kind of like into like the American interest of a geostrategic shift, as I think they're becoming more and more wary of China as opposed to Russia.
Yeah, I think well, let I don't want to forget my point, but you personally, and I asked this in the chat for in TikTok, and thank you for those that are on TikTok. Um, we've at least had 25 viewers, 108 impressions, so thank you very much. Um, what do you think Kursk was a strategic genius move, or do you think it was a fluke?
Are you talking about like the Ukrainian offensive?
Yeah, the Ukrainian offensive into Kursk.
I think that fundamentally speaking, I am not a military strategist, so I cannot really say much about it.
Neither of us are. Neither of us are.
But we have noticed that after this offensive, several members of the cabinet of Zelensky actually resigned, which that actually kind of makes me think that this might have been just an attempt at a haymaker that in the end is not going to really bring much of substance to like the efforts of the Ukrainian negotiations.
Okay.
Hello?
And y'all might ask, well, what are these homies? Why should they say something? Um, well, Pedro's over there in the EU. We went to school together at UNM, and he's currently working in France, and he's pretty traveled. He's Venezuelan, so I have an international background as well. I've been to Ukraine twice, so we're not just talking out of our asses. It may seem that we are, but we're just beginners. We're just beginners. Let's call it as it is.
I mean, I personally studied like political science and international studies. So even though like right now I do believe that I do have like some sort of like base and when it comes to like the sort of analysis, but of course, like I'm imperfect and there's always room for like improvement in everything.
Yeah, if anything, we're just gonna give you guys. We're gonna give you guys the basic news, and then we're gonna get into pretty spectacular individual, grassroots journalism. We're gonna show you a little bit of people that we watch within time. But for now, we're just gonna be as honest as possible with what the news is reporting.
Yeah. All right. Would you
Oh,
like to?
should we? Let's change topic. What's up?
Yeah. Would you like to talking about China, talking about the devil?
Oh, the devil, huh? The
Yeah.
devil.
Oh, wait a second.
Do you think China's the devil in this tariff war?
Okay. There is a lot to unpack it, but can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, I can now. You're on Reuters.
Perfect. China US envoy urges end to trade war but warns Beijing ready to fight. China's ambassador to the United States, Che Feng, I don't know how you say it, Feng, has urged
I mean, you just you
Che
didn't
Feng.
even give a fuck, dude. You're just like, I'm just gonna give it. Let me give it a try. Xi Fang. I'm gonna say Z Fang.
I'm gonna say it like a French guy, Che Feng.
Fang.
uh, has urged Washington
All
to seek
right.
common ground with Beijing and pursue peaceful coexistence while warning that China stood ready to retaliate in the escalating trade war. Speaking at a public event in Washington on Saturday, details of which were posted to the Chinese embassy's website, Xi'an said tariffs will devastate the global economy and drew a parallel between the Great Depression and tariffs imposed by the United States in 1930, referring to concepts in traditional Chinese medicine like the need to balance the opposing forces of yin and yang. She said harmony should guide relations between the world's two largest economies. A good traditional Chinese medicine recipe usually combines many different ingredients which reinforce one another and creates the best medical effect. I really like the way he speaks, to be honest. Like I love when in this sort of stuff like people like talks like in a poetic way, you know? They don't do that here in France.
Yeah.
They don't do that here in France. Likewise, the earth is big enough to accommodate both China and the United States. We should pursue peaceful coexistence rather than collide head on and help each other succeed rather than get caught in a loss-loss scenario. The trade war has all but frozen the mammal trade between the world's but two largest economies with tariffs over 100% in each direction and a suit of trade investment in cultural restrictions. China top chip building association Saturday attacked a U.S. plan to apply port fees on China-linked chips, while Japan, Taiwan, and others are already in talks or preparing to negotiate with Washington over President Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. There is currently no high-level dialogue planned with China. Trump said on Friday that the U.S. is having a good conversation privately with China amid the two countries' trade war. By the way, we have a nice conversation going with China. He told reporters at the White House it's like really very good. He did not offer additional details. Is that how you say it? Really very good. China has said the United States should show respect before any talks can take place. Damn. So I say China will put the trade war and will return to any country imposing tariffs on it. Okay, Orlando, you are the American, so I think this actually touches you a lot. So I would love to know, like, what is your opinion of this?
So, first of all, I think Trump's negotiation tactic is to stray away from the Ukrainian conflict and focus on China. And I think this was an impressive um, mode of diplomacy. And so imagine a world where the US and China no longer adhered to the multipolarized world view, um, and essentially just, you know, China facilitated the trade across west from the east and then vice versa. We could have a really beautiful, sustainable planet, or it could be a dystopian nightmare. Um, so, do I think United States and China will inevitably go to war? Most likely.
Hmm.
Do I think do I think there can be negotiations? Yes, but that doesn't mean there won't be any proxies. Um, the Southeast Asia can easily be a proxy war. So I think that's also probable.
Yeah. I the way I personally see it is that yeah, this is also all part of like the geostrategic shift that America is doing, and I do believe that fundamentally speaking, this is kind of a bluff in order to get like something else out of it. What it is exactly, whether it's like for example like American pressuring like China to like do to not touch Taiwan, That could be one way of doing it. At the same time, I also think it's also very likely that this is in a way, and I could be totally wrong, but if you ask me, it could be a way of like trying America actually trying to like increase its influence in the rest of Asia. Because if there is tariffs on China, then that means that companies they're actually naturally going to like move to other countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, um, I don't know, Laos, that sort of countries. But at the same time, it's like people do tend to forget that a lot of like these positions in regards to tariffs and protectionism actually used to be very popular amongst the American left.
So, do you think uh, war or conflict with China is harder to start if the left was in power? Because I personally think the Democrats kind of held off China in a way, conflict with China. Does that make sense?
I
But like
mean,
China expanded ridiculously, during that administration.
I mean, the way I kind of see it is that, for example, like in America, there's always been, and like in any other country, there's always been like two different philosophies. And one is the concept of economic sovereignty, national sovereignty, which is always warning in regard to like the process of deindustrialization that countries go through. More often utilizing, for example, the example of Detroit, of what happens when a region loses its industry and its economy. At the same time, you also have like the liberals who are actually of the opinion that trade in between nations is something that helps guarantee peace and stability. However, the problem with like liberalism is that it does not take into account ideological differences, like the principle that countries have like extremely different values, and also there is also the concept of oftentimes when it comes to like this sort of like industry, there's also like the concept of like national security too. For example, I think we all remember, for example, during COVID, how a lot of like the medical equipment that America needed was actually imported from China. And I feel like people are
Correct. Yeah.
starting to realize that. Or, I mean, people have already knew that, but COVID was kind of like a remembrance of that fact.
Um, I see China as so interesting, man. I think they are a civilization that has, I think they're over like around 3, 4,000 years old, and they've been through so much in the sense of like war, famine, totalitarian governments, dictatorships. I think we have a very naive view about how the Chinese brain works, as the entire region. Um, their actions politically reflect a very ancient and a very innovative, technologically futuristic perspective on the world. I,
Hello?
I do think, and I could totally disagree with that, but that doesn't mean it can't
Yeah. Can you hear me?
happen. Enthusiastic about being the center of the world, they can easily make it so.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the way I kind of see it is that, I think that the big difference between like China and America is that unlike America, the problem with with most like democratic system is that the politicians tend to think in terms of like the next elections. The Chinese don't do that. The Chinese are thinking rather in terms of more than 30 years. And you can actually
Yeah.
observe like some of those actions in the way, for example, that they've been able to like take hold in the construction of infrastructure in Africa, which has kind of become pretty much a new form of new colonialism in the continent, and also like just the fact that it's pretty much become like a popular meme that to say, it's like China does nothing, China wins. You know that meme?
No, no, I know, but I think I know what you're talking about.
And I think that I think the Chinese are intelligent enough to understand that going into direct war with the United States of America, it's not a good idea for anyone. And rather, I think that in the question of Taiwan, they're just waiting. They're just waiting for the perfect opportunity. They're just waiting for like a moment in which United States falters or is unable to like respond properly to the situation.
Yeah, and also, um, you know what? I like this envoy, man. I kind of like him. I like the way he spoke. You know, the way he uses words. Um, he could be deceiving, but if he's honest, at least he told the truth. Does that make sense?
Are
Like,
you
at least
call
he's being diplomatically truthful.
are you calling him deceiving because he's Chinese?
You know what? I did get a few Bitcoin from the CCP a few weeks back whenever I said China has full right to Japan and Taiwan. No, just kidding. Dude, that's fucked up.
Uh,
Hey,
uh,
man, China is just doing what other countries did to China. That's all I'm saying.
ay, ay, ay. So, we would like to
China,
pick.
Japan fucked up China, and if China wants to fuck up Japan, that is a sad the way of karma, unfortunately.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'll
We
probably get banned on TikTok. That's okay.
No, 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 no. You're talking well of China, man. If anything, we're gonna become rich now.
Dude, Rumble, we're okay. On Rumble, we're okay. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on Rumble, we can say whatever we want.
All right. You wanna change to another topic?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Thank you for the viewers. There's around 46 right now. There was 25, 46. Still got 100 impressions or so. So it's not too bad. Not too bad. Thank you for those that are joining. Please, if you're joining from TikTok, follow me. That's what I kind of need most. So if you appreciate this kind of content, we will get better, promise. But yeah, follow me and hit that follow button.
All right. Actually, you had the news about Bukele. Would you rather talk about that one?
Yeah, yeah. This I found this article that is really intriguing, man. Um, I was going through the news to try to see because there's a whole perspective right now going on with El Salvador and the United States. There's an alliance happening, and I think it's pretty fucking cool. Me personally.
Hmm. You wanna share your screen and read the
What
news?
first of all, what's your perspective about? Yeah. Let me know if you see it. Let me know if you see it. Okay.
I don't see it yet.
Um, maybe click click on another tab and then click back because I see it on TikTok and all that.
Okay. I don't see it yet, I'm afraid. but it's fine.
Okay, let me see if it's on Rumble. Okay, yeah, it probably won't be on Rumble. Let me talk about it though. Trump has found in El Salvador a model for the repressive state getting started. So, the Guardian is obviously pretty biased, but here it says the terrorism maximum security prison.
I see it now. Perfect.
World has suddenly shifted into a sort of policy of confinement. Mega prisons are now a thing, bro. It's happening, everyone. Mega prisons are coming. Harsh security measures, it's coming. And for those that believe that 9 to 5, that's just an anomaly. The reality is that the world is fucking crazy. The world is fucking crazy. Sure, there might be people that have been jailed for wrong reasons and deported for wrong reasons, understandably so. But um, Mara Salvatrucha, that's a real thing. They displaced hundreds and thousands of people. Um, the wars of El Salvador, they displaced so many people,
Yes.
and a lot of people don't have any experience with gangs and gangs activity. It's a fucking, and it's different. It's different than over here.
No, yeah. I mean, you're not a weird Latinos, but it's like the way personally I see it is that what was happening in El Salvador before the arrival of Bukele, that was not a simple crime problem, also war. And the thing is that when you're in war, the rules become different, and it really becomes a matter of who wins and who loses. You know, I will say that I just wish that there was like a way of redemption for like the people who are actually arrested, who were like member of like these gangs. You know, because I do believe that no one should be ever be like. I think everyone does deserve like a path of redemption. That's the thing. Like, yeah, it was
Yeah,
necessary.
I totally.
Like
I
he's
think
actually
the due
sorry.
process is important as well.
Yes, like I what he did was absolutely necessary. I would just say that I just hope that there is like a conversation going on in that country in regards to what to do with like all of those people who are actually closed down because I mean something needs to be done.
Yeah. As I mentioned, the if you've never been really, around gang activity or this kind of conflict, this kind of violence, you probably have no clue what it's like. And I think the mega prison or the mass incarceration aspect, it was coming. And I think El Salvador, even though they're doing some crazy shit, crazy measures across Latin America, they probably have the highest incarceration rate right now, correct? Um, and it's not only going to be the United States. Mexico is going to get on it. Colombia, maybe Europe is going to get in on it. It's I think it's going to become a thing, bro. There's going to be jungle gulags on this side of the world. We have to accept it.
No,
But
yeah.
I do like the relationship going on with El Salvador and Trump. I do like it.
Yeah, that's part of like the whole culture war too, like this concept like the right wing international, which is a funny name in spite of there being like a lot of like differences, which are marked by like the socioeconomic existence of each country. But yeah,
So Um, we've been live for about 34 minutes. I think we can keep going. Should we hit up? I kind of want to hit up Popular Front, but let me know whenever. Do you have anything else to cover?
I'm actually feeling pretty tired. I would not mind actually ending the stream right now.
All right.
Yeah.